Hello everyone, welcome to HillBro. Today I am going to go over what happened to the Mutant Cat. For years I've had many of our previous followers who've been following us since the very beginning ask us what happened to the Mutant Cat. And for those of you who are new to the channel, the Mutant Cat is a SxS that we heavily modified years back and had some fun with it. And a lot of people who are following the side-by-side industry, especially the SxS people, were following us with the Mutant Cat. What we did is we built our own suspension. We widened it to a 77 wide. We lengthened it at about 6.5 inches. And then we put our own turbo kit, which Push Turbo helped tune it for us. And what's crazy is we built that machine in the span of a month. When we first tested the SxS and decided we wanted to go with one, we pulled the trigger, and about a month and a half later, we were supposed to be in Heydays, and we wanted to have this thing at least, for the most part, presentable at Heydays. My dad, my brother, and I, we put everything we had into getting this thing ready to be presentable at Heydays. And then about a month and a half later after that, we had it running. And then we hit our busy season of making snowmobile exhausts. And then come the following spring, we took it to Rally on the Rocks, the side-by-side event where Wildcat Riders was there. Because of how quickly we built it, we ran into issues because of being a fast build, but other issues we ran into just because we were finding the weak points of the SxS with turbo, with a turbo, with boost, and those were axles, those were transaxles, those were clutches. I mean, if you go back and follow some of our videos, we all know, you know what happened to that machine. Well, for the most part, we actually got that machine running really, really well, and I was really enjoying it. And then a few things in my personal life happened. We went through COVID, and we all know how frustrating the time of COVID-19 and the pandemic, or however you want to call it, was for everyone. That was no different for us. That hurt us bad. A lot of people say, well, the motorsports industry took off during that time. It's like, well, yes. Our problem was we were expanding our business, our building and our equipment, and I had tons of money out there purchasing or deposits down on equipment to make life easier for our manufacturing of snowmobile exhausts and parts. And all that money was supposed to prepare for the season of that year to make it more productive and make it easier to build and produce. But that didn't happen. So all my money was gone and life was not easier. We were out of money and we were working our butts off. And then mixed with that, some of the other personal things, my family grew. I have a lot of kids. We're still adding to the family. We call it the Hill'em herd. Some of the unfortunate things, like I personally had a sister, who was only about a year older than me, my sister Brooke, pass away from health complications during or just after the whole time of COVID-19. And amongst everything was just, I don't know. It was a lot to go through. In the middle of that whole scenario, I pulled the Mutant Cat out to go take it for a spin with a friend of mine. And as we were riding it through the small dunes north of our house, it went through a transaxle, a blue transmission. And it just took the wind completely out of my sails in anything side-by-side related, anything project related, anything HillBro video related. And I personally took a break from doing videos. As you guys can tell, besides the videos that we did last year, we hadn't posted anything for dang near 4 years before that. After putting about 250, 300 horsepower through that machine, I quickly realized the clutches aren't going to handle that amount of power. The transaxle, even if it's built, isn't going to handle that kind of power and go through the desert reliably. And so I came up with this idea. I just want to get rid of the whole drivetrain of that SxS, of the Mutant Cat, and go with something a little more reliable. And I had been following the YXZs. We had a couple YXZ builds in the past, And I was just flat impressed of what these YXZs were going through. Now they're not without problems, like they have problems with the rear differentials and a couple upgrades you need to do to the transmission, and if you're doing the sport shift, the pedal shift, you need to run like a boost lock and stuff. But everyone knows that the YXZs handle like a wagon, and the SxS handle great. And so I had this idea years ago, let's mix the best of both worlds. The handling and strength of the SxS, the drivetrain, and the fun experience of shifting of the YXZ. So that brings us to now. What happened to the Mutant Cat? Well, here it is. The Mutant Cat just kind of got put in the corner for a couple of years because I had an idea of how I wanted to make it better, but I was not quite ready on jumping on it to make it better until about 2 years or a year ago. And I felt like I had run everything through my mind of how to make this work. And then I got to starting to order parts, special parts that needed to be ordered, and started putting it together. Unfortunately, I ran into another issue where one of my parts that I needed to have specially built for this machine was supposed to take 2 months, took over a year from talking about it getting done to actually me receiving it. And then when I received it in like October, if I remember right, of last year. And that is the worst time for me to receive special parts on special builds because I am in the middle of my welding season for mufflers. I still got a couple mufflers in the welding room. Excuse the noise in the background. It's a little messy because I'm still doing muffler stuff while working on the YXZ, or excuse me, the Mutant Cat. As soon as I was ready to jump on this machine, ready to go, last year I found out I was not receiving my part, which happens to be the custom rear differential, which is completely necessary for this build. And it pushed this machine until this year. Hopefully, we're rolling and we can get it done this year. So here it is, you guys. The Mutant Cat as it sits now. But what's different now versus before is I feel like we have most of everything we need to finish this up really quick now. Everyone who's put power in a YXZ knows the stock YXZ rear differential is not very strong and you need to go with a built rear end differential. The problem with the SxS is that they run plunging axles in the rear end because of the way the suspension is set up. And there isn't very many options out there that allow for plunging CVs on a rear differential. There's a lot of rear transaxles from like V8s and other buggy builds, but I don't want a transaxle back there. I want to do the YXZ transmission with a differential. And fortunately, Proformance, Scott at Proformance was making an option, a really built option for the YXZs that I had seen and I had inquired of and asked him, hey, can you put them rear differentials? But I specifically need it so I could have plunging CVs. And I want to show you this. Not only does it mount plunging CVs, but it's also an internal CV, as you can see here. So I'm going to get plunge on this CV, but I'm also going to get wider axles because the axles stub into the rear differential, which hopefully in turn will give me better travel. Because one of the other problems you run into on travel with a buggy setup like this is your CV angles. You can't be super extreme in your CV angles, and you're limited on your plunge distance for travel. Hopefully with wider axles and the way we have it set up, we'll be plunging CVs on the inside and on the outside, so on the differential and on the hubs. Then hopefully we'll be able to see significant travel out of the new Mutant Cat. So I'm also going through a complete rebuild of the suspension of the Mutant Cat because, like I said, we built our original Mutant Cat pretty quickly. We did a dang good job considering how fast we did it. But because of the wider suspension, I actually found that my rear trailing arms were twisting after jumping it and putting it through the loads. And that's also part of the reason why everyone who has come to me and asked for plans or to have help build a rear trailing arm setup on their XXs, I have been reluctant to give it to anyone because I know that they weren't completely refined, and I just didn't want to charge anyone or promise the world to anyone and them have issues down the road. I am totally rebuilding the rear trailing arm setup here on my Mutant Cat. My dad still has his project side by side as well, if you remember seeing that when we did that right around the Butte. Unfortunately, that hasn't run in 2 years either. He's waiting to see how this turns out, and if it turns out good, he's actually going to want to do the same thing to his machine. For those of you that are familiar with the XX would know that this bar here normally attaches here on the chassis behind the driver's and passenger seat. And then the shock mounts normally, which are not here, are usually here. I have moved them obviously because one of the weak points on a stock XX is actually this shock mount here. A lot of times when you ride the XX hard in the desert, or if you're jumping it or hitting the whoops hard, this bar here and these shock mounts right here will tend to fail and break. And hence for those of you who know the XX know that they offer a gusset that you can weld in or bolt in to make it sturdy. So I have completely just bypassed mounting the shocks to that portion of the frame right there. And I am putting it into the entire roll cage, similar to what you would see on any other type of buggy. The other reason why I am moving the shocks outboard is because I don't have the stock. We are still going wide. We're still going 77 wide. And because I was having issues of the previous trailing arms twisting over time, I'm not an engineer. I am not running numbers. I'm not running ratios. It's just, to me, what makes sense. What's the next thing to do to try and prevent anything happening? And that is move the shocks outboard. Move them as close to the tire as you can so you don't have nearly as much leverage and twist between the mounting points and the tires. And so that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm moving the shocks out, I'm putting it as close to the tires. Hopefully I can reduce that leverage and see a lot more reliability and performance out of the new trailing arms that I am making. I really want to get the Mutant Cat finished for the YXZ event here in St. Anthony at the end of May. A guy named Tim Allen, not Home Improvement Tim Allen, he's putting together a group event for the YXZ community here at St. Anthony. It'll be the first one we've ever had here at St. Anthony, and I'm excited for. And I want to show up in my YXZ, or I should say my YXXZ. It's going to be close. I hope to have it done by then. The other reason why it was important to have that rear differential is it's supposed to be running the same gear ratio as the YXZ currently runs. That was important because I know there are other rear differential options, but some of them are running different gear ratios. I like running four-wheel drive. I like running four-wheel drive in the desert and even in the dunes. I rarely run paddle tires, and so I run four-wheel drive a lot. And so I needed something that would match up to an option for a front differential. Nothing matched the front differential of a XX or anything else that was an option for putting into this project. And so I went ahead and put the YXZ front differential in it. I made myself my own little mounting brackets and everything to put the front differential of a YXZ in there. I went ahead and put that four spline spider in it. I forget the name, MD something. You can search for spline spider for the YXZ and it'll show up. And I'm told by people at Proformance and others that they use that setup for running like King of Hammers and stuff, and they haven't had issues. And so I'm actually feeling pretty confident that this front differential will hold up just fine. The only thing I am worried about is you still have to run a front YXZ CV spline up front, which is very narrow compared to what we're using everywhere else. that may not be an issue because it is the front wheels, not the rear wheels. Hopefully it'll hold up just fine. So I know a lot of you are going to ask me, so you went ahead and just bought a YXZ transmission and a couple of parts to make this build? No. Actually, what I did is I purchased a wrecked YXZ off the auction block, and I sacrificed it for all the components. Because if you think about it, if I'm running a YXZ transmission, then I'm going to have to run a YXZ front differential, and then I'm going to have to, I might as well just run everything YXZ and act as if I am modifying a YXZ, which means a wiring harness, which means everything else. And so I figured the best, cheapest option for me to accomplish this build was to just buy a wrecked YXZ and sacrifice everything for it for this build. And that's exactly what I did. I got a 2021 XTR, and it didn't show the miles on it when I purchased it, but from my reasoning in my head, looking at all the pictures that I could, because I bought it sight unseen, I was like, this can't have more than 200 miles on it. And when I picked it up and I put power to it and I was able to turn it on, I found out the thing only had 72 miles on it. Dang near a brand new YXZ with everything that I needed to work on from there and move forward. So this being a 2001 XTR, it is of course the Sport Shift, the SS. But because of that, and because I am going to put my Borg-Warner turbo back on this, I actually really like that Borg-Warner turbo on the Mutant Cat. So I've gone ahead and purchased this, I want to say, yeah, the JTE. For those of you in the YXZ world know what I'm talking about, the JTE boost lock, which will help use the boost pressure of the turbo to lock the transmission when it's in gear and make sure that I'm not getting any slipping. But what I am hoping to gain is about 275, maybe 300 horsepower. I don't want to push more than about 15 pounds of boost through this machine, because I want to be able to run this machine through the desert, hundreds of miles, and then stop at a local gas station and pick up 91 ethanol free and just put it in there and not worry about it and run again. And get plenty of power, but yet not be confined to the octane or using race fuel or E85. And then the idea with the whole build is just get away from the CVTs. CVTs were driving me nuts. I was to the point I just wanted to completely swear off CVTs, until since then the Pro R came out, and Polaris has actually proved that Pro R to be pretty dang reliable, and that has kind of sold me on, you know, putting faith back into the CVTs. But I do know that when you're starting to deal with high horsepower and heavy machines such as these, the CVTs of the past are just no longer where it can be. We need to go into paddle shifting or gearboxes. But since then, obviously, Can-Am has released the Mavlar, which is a good machine. I have my own little opinions about it, but beside my opinion, that machine is actually pretty dang cool and phenomenal. And I want to be able to get 10,000 miles of hard desert runs with this machine without any major failures. Now, obviously, we're going to have axle maintenance, oil maintenance, and a few things here and there, but we won't have, I don't want any differential failures, motor failures, transmission failures, hopefully no suspension or chassis crack failures. That may not be totally dependent on the equipment itself, but driving probably won't be the best dune machine simply because of the weight of the trailing arms of the chassis, making it big and robust for the desert. So despite the challenges that me and my family have been through the past few years, I just happened to put that in the corner for sanity's sake for a while. Went out and bought myself a Renegade, love my Renegade, and then also a stock XX. I have been really enjoying the XX. I know I just did a rant of everything bad about the XX, but in all honesty, I still feel the XX is one of the most valuable machines you could own. I'm not saying it's the best machine you can own, but I'm saying value for dollar. That is definitely one of the most underrated machine out there. But if you know how to work on a SxS and you know what corks you have to address before you really get out and enjoy one, you can make a really affordable machine run and run and run. And I am grateful that I picked this SxS up, because through the last few years that have been personally hard on myself, this thing has helped me get me through it and enjoy the desert. I have missed the boost and the performance. 200, 300 horse, yes, I have missed it. And I've not felt justified of spending a ton of money on any of these new machines. They're good machines, don't get me wrong, but I like to be a little bit different, hence the reason why we made the Mutant Cat in the first place. If you keep it stock and well maintained, clutches usually aren't an issue. Transaxles, like I say, they've updated it since 2018. If you get one of the new updated transaxles and you keep everything aligned and maintained, these things will go thousands and thousands of miles without problems. And that's exactly what we've done with this. I have not babied this one bit, and I bought it used, and I have just used it hard. And I love the SxS, if you can't tell. Also, I picked up another YXZ just about a month ago. I wanted it as reference for when I start putting together the Mutant Cat. And if any of you YXZ guys are watching, that will be at the YXZ gathering here in St. Anthony at the end of May. This thing might be around and is for sale. If you want to have a YXZ to join the group, or just to have a fun sandwich or a wicked machine for the sand project. Right there. That's actually one of the best options you can go with. That is what has happened to the Mutant Cat. It's not gone. I'm still working on it. I know I've been saying that for years, but I am making this video now because I feel like we can bring the Mutant Cat back to life. Maybe call it the Frankenstein Mutant Cat. It's alive here in this next short bit. For all you awesome people who have been following HillBro from the very beginning, and especially during the time of the SxS Mutant Cat build, we are now up to speed to current time now of what's going on. And for all of you guys who are new to the channel and you've stuck through this video, you guys are awesome as well. I really appreciate you watching HillBro. Hopefully these combinations will help us continue our efforts of exploring Idaho. We are still continuing our connecting rides from St. Anthony to hundreds of miles around via dirt off-road. We'll still be doing that, but we will also be including some of the builds, new builds and previous builds that have been a big part of HillBro from the past. Please like and subscribe if you have not yet. That is the only thing that content creators ask for as far as a payment. It's not even a payment, but that's the only way we can receive benefit or reward for our efforts of what we do. And so if you can like, subscribe, and comment, it'd be greatly appreciated. With that, thanks for watching HillBro. Have a great day. See ya.